leave, the job descriptions for job descriptions. What you need to say is, this is why this company hired me. This is what I accomplished while I was there. And it has to be relevant. And you have to also make it, like where because employees do two things. They make you money or they save you money. Okay. Mm-hmm. And if you can't say which one of those that you've done and what exactly you did, then you go back to regurgitating a job description.
Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Money and You Show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. Very, very excited about a great guest I have today. I love the guests who come on this show. As you know, they are all just really, really high quality, wonderful people who are wanting to share their expertise and their knowledge with my audience. So how could we not love them? So I'm going to introduce our next guest, and we're going to dive into many topics today. We're going to talk a bit about career transition, business, and money, and that's something that I did for many years in the Limit Free Life show, and I'm very excited because it's so apropos to what's going on today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Kathy Hammond. She's an eminent figure in sales and talent acquisition. With a remarkable track record, Kathy has surpassed $100 million in revenue generated over the course of her illustrious career. Her expertise lies in creating employee selection programs, benefiting renowned clients such as Transamerica, Forever 21, the City of Los Angeles, resulting in millions of dollars in savings and revenue. Boasting 3 decades of experience, Kathy holds a master's in organizational management and founded 2 successful recruiting solutions companies. Her literary prowess is equally impressive, having received accolades as an award-winning author. Notably, Kathy's knowledge and charisma have made her an esteemed international speaker, earning the admiration of CEOs worldwide. At the core of Kathy's success is her revolutionary recruitment system, Predictable Profits, the seven-step talent acquisition process to supercharge your revenue, that shows organizations how to 10x their candidate pool to produce 4x more relevant candidates than from job boards. As a recruitment solutions expert, Kathy can help any independent recruiter, HR, or talent acquisition leader transition from struggling to find the right sales talent for their clients or organization to experiencing significant revenue growth. Welcome, Kathy.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi. I'm so happy that you're joining us today. And yeah, you have such a wealth of knowledge, and there's so much to talk about. We've been talking behind the scenes about, the job market right now and what both candidates and employers can do to, help themselves and help their financial situations. So I think I'm going to ask you to give us a little kind of background on why you do what you do. And I'm also going to ask you, just so you can, I should have told you ahead of time actually, but I thought about this morning while I was getting ready, that I really want to start asking my guests, and I wouldn't tackle this with some, but I know that you have the experience and you'll be able to handle this. But on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think your relationship with money is and why? So give us some background and then we'll come back to that.
My personal relationship with money?
Yeah.
It's the foundation for everything that I do, for business and personal. And so it's something that I take very personally and very seriously. Maybe that wasn't the case early on as you're kind of finding your way through life. But because it's a goalpost, it is it's our resources to be able to really fully realize everything that we want to do. So you have to take that seriously. And so that's my personal relationship.
Thank you. That was a great answer. Yeah, I just thought about that. I mean, we all do have our own relationship with money. Some of them are better than others, and some of us have worked on them, and some of us are starting to work on them. So, yeah, thank you. I think that, and taking it seriously is acknowledging that it is a relationship that needs attention like many others. So I love that. So let's hear a little about how you got into doing what you do.
I've been in sales since I was 14. My first job was selling flowers on street corners, and and that was kind of iffy for the customer base. So I asked the owner of the company, because he would take us and drop us off, if he would put me at the gates of a local cemetery, because I figured they're going in, they're going to need some flowers. And I had so much fun building these bouquets, and for all these people, and then they would just spend all kinds of money. So I was, I was in from that point on. But what I realized that over the years, and as I would, go to get a job in sales, with a particular company, and sometimes I would be rejected, just saying, well, you're not the right fit. But I knew that I could really do an amazing job. So that I couldn't understand that. And then some years later, after graduate school, and I joined one of the largest pre-employment testing companies in the US, and began learning the entire process of the science of employee selection. And then I realized what companies were doing wrong about hiring, and especially one of the most important roles in the organization. Because without sales, there is no company.
Right.
So after I did that for several years, and then went out on my own, and I thought, I want to do a sales recruiting agency, and be able to help, really put together, really help, with the candidates to be able to position them well to the clients. So, so that's what I've been doing. And then I developed a process, a system that could predictably deliver candidates that were high-performing sales professionals. And so I've formalized that process, and that's where I am today.
Thank you. I love that. And I love that you mentioned, how the importance of sales, because I think, this is a money show, and sales is the key to your business. I mean, without sales, you've got a charity or you've got a hobby, but you don't really have a business. And I know, people go into things for a lot of reasons. A lot of them are about service and giving of their gifts or whatever. But if you don't have that sales piece, despite what you might think about sales, it's just not going anywhere, and you can't serve the people that you want to serve. So I love having people like you on who understand that and who help people to do that, because it is so important, and yet it has kind of this label around it that, has a bit of a negative connotation, while it absolutely shouldn't at all. And so how do you address that with people? How do you feel about that?
I think especially if you have your own business and you're just starting out with that, and you may, you're probably very passionate about what it is that you want to sell. But because, like you said, sales can have a negative connotation that may be buried deep somewhere in the person who, the entrepreneur, that they're thinking that, if I try to sell this, I'm being like one of those slimy salespeople. And and I still hear that even, when sales has become so sophisticated over the last, few decades, people are still approaching it that way. But when they do that, the entrepreneur, for example, if they're doing that, all they're doing is stunting their growth, if not crushing it completely. So they have to get very comfortable with the idea of sales and learn as much as they can about it. And if they themselves don't want to do the sales, they need to hire people who know how to sell.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. And I'm in some big business groups, and that always comes at some point in people's growth. It's like, I've been selling all along, is it time to have I'd rather somebody else do it, but is it time? And from your experience, because obviously there's a cost to hiring that salesperson. There's a risk and there's an upside, like with everything. So, what is your advice as to kind of when it's time?
Well, actually, we do tend to think that, and I'll tell you, I've told this story before, where the first person that I hired as a salesperson, and I'm a professionally trained salesperson, he was having to push start his ancient Volkswagen Beetle went from prospects and clients' offices, which wasn't exactly the image I was trying to portray. But I didn't know what I was doing when I hired him. And also, I got him cheap. So that was probably a big,
Yeah.
that was a big lesson right there that I had. Because a really good salesperson is not a cost. They are an investment, and they will bring you back that revenue 10, 20 fold, depending upon, what the company's all about. So, so the moment that, I mean, I think of a business owner, if you really don't have that skill set, you should just hire them somehow, find some way to be able to get somebody on board. Otherwise, you're going to have to take that time to learn it yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's really, do you want to circumvent time by hiring a salesperson, or, are you comfortable enough, or do you have the time to be able to do it?
Right.
Because an entrepreneur they've only got 24 hours in the day. So don't want to, you can't be too stretched, because then you're not creating anymore.
Yeah, and you're kind of not in that sort of, visionary mode where you're the strategist for your business. You're down in the trenches, really trying to make business happen. So I'm not sure.
It's like that book,
You're thinking of the E-Myth. Yeah.
Yes. Where you're working in your business versus working on your business. And, and that's, I mean, I've been in that trap before, because I thought, well, I can't afford to, bring on these different people to do the job. And so I did it myself. And I'm often not very good at all those jobs.
Yeah.
So, like they say, even in the E-Myth, it's like you do the job until you get somebody else to, with the goal of replacing yourself to do the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm guilty of that too. I think of actually years I've wasted trying to do less sales, but more the marketing, like trying to bring people in so that I could actually, the sales conversation is not that difficult if you're just sort of sharing what you do, which is, I think, the approach I would take, or how I could help them. But it's getting the leads, in which I found to be
right.
The whole skill set.
Lead generation.
Have. Yeah.
A lot of that can be handed off, and that's part of the sales process. But when you're talking about professional sales, mm-hmm. This is the person a skilled salesperson. It's not just about being able to deliver the information, but delivering it in such a way that it is addressing all of the pain points that have been uncovered, during, as you conduct your discovery calls, and it's not always the same thing. Even if you could be selling to the same audience, selling the same product or service, but each company has its own challenges. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be really good at it. It's almost like taking that Socratic approach, what Socrates would do, to keep drilling down more and more and more, and until you really get to the root of what the issues are. And so that's where you get the benefit of a professional salesperson who knows exactly how to do that. And then that puts you heads and shoulders above your competition, because most people sell on features and benefits. And if I can add, Caliper Corporation, they conducted dozens of studies around salespeople, and they found that 55% of people in sales should not be. 25% are selling the wrong thing. And that leaves only 20% of people in sales currently that are selling the right thing and know how to sell. So it's a really large problem for companies, and which is why they end up with 34% turnover on average for their sales team.
Wow, those are some very interesting statistics, and it brings up a lot of questions. So, in your experience, what are I mean, obviously it doesn't spread across the board, but what are some of the keys to being a good salesperson, if you can summarize it?
Empathy, humility. These are some of the behavioral traits. Humility, um, you know, being, of course, a good listener and knowing the right questions to ask, which means that you really need to understand business. If you're doing a business to business sale, and if you're doing business to consumer, then you really have to understand who your avatar is. What's their motivation? Depending on the level of like where you're selling, if it's, small and medium sized business up to enterprise level, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies, knowing how to navigate those waters, because everything at that level, in the larger companies, is committee. It's bought by committee. So you're not having a single decision maker. You have to also have perseverance. You need grit. You can't be sensitive. You have to be able to withstand rejection. And you just have to be just focused on wanting to deliver value and solving your customers' problems. So that kind of sums up a bit for sales pros.
Very interesting. And a little, when you hear that, it's like you got this person with empathy and humility who also needs to have the grit and be able to take a lot of rejection. Sometimes it doesn't feel like those would be found in the same person, but obviously they are. I mean, but it's just interesting to break it down that way. So,
and then on top of that, they need to know how to perform the functions that a salesperson, the actual job tasks. So, because we've done, job analysis and, on sales jobs, and we have like 21 different areas where we can assess if a salesperson knows how to, because they have to know how to do certain things, because really in, 3+ decades of selling, that when I've gone for a job interview, not a single company, not a single hiring manager has ever asked me to prove that I know how to prospect for accounts, that I know how to get in the door of the C-suite to the decision makers, that I know how to close, that I know how to present. They've never asked me to prove it. They just assume that if I put on my resume, these big sales, that I know how to do it. But I could have had a whole team behind me. Because like if you need somebody who's going to be prospecting for you, how do you uncover if they really are a hunter? Are they actually going to pick up the phone? Are they going to send out emails? Are they going to network? How do you know that? So of course we know what to ask to uncover if someone does that. And when we take candidates through we have a 2-step process that for screening.
Okay.
And I've had them have to leave the interview themselves. They choose that because they can't answer the questions. And they, of course, fall in that 55% of salespeople who shouldn't be in sales.
Really interesting. Gosh, that brings up a lot of thoughts, too, about the entrepreneurs who are like, until I get to a certain point, I'll do my own sales. Well, do they know all these things? Probably not in many cases, I would think. Because
not unless they came up the sales track.
Yeah.
And even if they did, they may not have performed all those things well. You'll have salespeople who they don't conduct their own demonstrations of the product or the service. and maybe they can't write a winning proposal.
Yeah.
But these are things that you may need, with a salesperson. So,
Oof.
and if the entrepreneur themselves haven't done any of those things,
Yeah.
then they have to learn very quickly, or they have to hire someone to be able to do it.
But that's so interesting, the how to hire, because you can waste a lot of time and money. There's a huge cost to hiring the wrong person, as you know. And so you might even be able to put some numbers to that. I can't. But that is a tremendous, and it's defeating. When you've done that 2 or 3 or 4 times, all of a sudden you feel like there's no point. I won't be able to find the person.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But it's only because no one has taught them how to hire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Across any jobs. They say that less than 5% of managers have received an hour of training on how to hire people.
Wow.
5%. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that I can see. I can see in real life when I hear the stories of people going and having interviews and what have you. So
Yeah.
what? Tell me about your 7-step program, and that's for the people doing the hiring, correct?
It is for the people doing the hiring, and then also for independent recruiters who really want to build out their sales recruiting.
Okay.
Especially in challenging financial times, sales they'll always be running sales. They'll always have people in sales.
Right.
And so they'll always want to have sales talent. So it's really an understanding, okay, how do I identify, if you're, say, hiring people, how am I going to identify these candidates? Well, my 7-step system shows you exactly how to find them. And a lot of the heavy focus on the passive candidate market, because that represents the largest talent pool that companies have, and that represents 73%. So 73% of candidates are passive candidates, meaning that they're not looking for a job, but they are open to hearing about new opportunities. Mm-hmm. But companies are not tapping into that market. They're posting on job boards, and even LinkedIn says that they have a 10% efficacy rate on their job board, which means that out of 100 applicants, you're getting maybe 10 who might be relevant.
Wow.
So, and which is why you see these job posts, over and over again from companies. So, but my system shows you how to get away from all of that and actually get to where the candidates are and how to screen them to make sure that they actually are exactly what you need. And what a company needs, one company needs, is not maybe what the other company needs. So we also show them how to identify exactly what it is that they need.
Right. Yeah, this is so interesting to me, especially, we talked at the beginning about the time we're in, and we are hearing about constant layoffs. I mean, it's just it's a big deal. Not that the economy isn't, frankly, seeming to be doing quite well, but things are just changing. It's a really interesting time because technology and other things and companies are just shifting in so many ways. So that's really affecting people out there and their jobs. And what are you seeing since you're kind of in this world?
Well, what I'm seeing a lot of, are people on LinkedIn lamenting their layoff.
Yeah.
And so I saw something last week where this person had been laid off. I don't know how long ago, but he said, "This is, a plea because I'm desperate. I'm going to be thrown out of, my house. I'm going to be on the streets with my family and so on." So I went to look at his profile, and he also had on there his resume posted. And I thought, okay, well, there are the problems. Okay, this is why he's not getting callbacks. Even though he said, "Oh, I've redone my resume over and over again." Well, he's getting some really bad advice. So And I see that a lot because people regurgitate their job descriptions in their LinkedIn profiles or in their resume. And that doesn't tell any employer what it is that you're capable of doing. Because you say, well, this is what I was supposed to do, but we don't know if they did it, and we don't know if they did it if they were successful at doing it.
Right.
So there has to be a different focus on your resume, and that has to be accomplishment based. So, leave, the job descriptions for job descriptions. What you need to say is, this is why this company hired me. This is what I accomplished while I was there. And it has to be relevant. And you have to also make it, like where because employees do two things. They make you money or they save you money. Okay. Mm-hmm. And if you can't say which one of those that you've done and what exactly you did, then you go back to regurgitating a job description. So if they would start changing their focus more to that specifically, and then pursue the companies where they want to work, find the hiring manager, start sending everything out to them. And this is because you have to be proactive. Just sitting there sending out, because somebody said, well, I sent out 400 resumes. No, what they did is they hit, apply 400 times.
Yeah.
Long before the internet, people actually had to print and mail their resumes. And so they were very discerning as to where they were sending them, but now they aren't. So because they don't know, sometimes they just don't even know what they want to do. Candidates come to me and say, I can do anything. And I am convinced they cannot. They can do certain things very well. So you just have to find out they have to find out what that is for themselves.
Oh, wow. I could talk about this forever. This is how my business started. I had the Limit Free Life company 13 years ago. I started in career coaching, and I still do it. But I sort of moved my focus over a little bit more to financial coaching because I would see the limitations that people's financial situations would have on their ability to transition their career. So, or to go into business for themselves if that's what they wanted. So, but I can't get enough of this conversation because I think the job world is fascinating. And everything you're saying is so, I agree with all of it. And I found that myself, and people just sort of throwing themselves at jobs and not taking the time to think of what is it that they really want. I mean, at least initially go for what you want, but most people don't know what they want. They know where they've been. They know what, it's really a lot of introspection that needs to happen to make the job search effective, in my opinion. And so I love everything you're saying and the mistakes on LinkedIn and the resumes. And, for me, I'm listening going, how do people not know this? It's been this way for a little while now. But when you're working, you don't pay attention to what's needed, to do a career search, and people don't. It's a lot like money. You don't pay attention to things until you're in trouble or you're, have a problem. And when you're working, you should always have kind of your pulse on what's going on in the world of career search, because at any point you could be back in it and going by the old rules of how a resume should look. Or, I recently had a friend called, and somebody she knew had lost a high-level job. And, I made some connections, and the first suggestion was, you need to work on your LinkedIn. And his response was, at my level, it's all about who you know. I don't have to work on my LinkedIn. And, you kind of have to do all the things. So, I mean, maybe you could speak about LinkedIn for just a minute. I mean, it's still a really, more so than ever. I mean, LinkedIn has changed a little. Even what you were talking about, the story of the person kind of bearing their soul and putting their desperation on LinkedIn. I personally don't see that as a benefit. Maybe he was hoping somebody would come along and just offer him something out of, sympathy.
Take pity on them.
Yeah. But, to me, I'm old school when it comes to showing up professionally on something like that.
Right. What they fail to appreciate, perhaps, when they're a job seeker, is that when you're looking for a job, it's a sales job.
Thank you. That's
so,
yeah.
And, salespeople who are desperate are rejected by companies, So, and in the instance of a job seeker, like you said, that he's bearing a soul out there, and it really is not a professional stance. But you have to look at it from it's almost like an approach that especially some of the younger ones coming up, because they don't yet have the wisdom, they haven't had that experience in life, that it's almost like, well, I'm here, so I should be able to excuse me, I should be employed because I exist.
Yeah.
And it's just not the right approach.
Yeah, thank you. And I do love what you said about it being a sales job. I think that's really, we've kind of come full circle here with the idea of sales. And I think, and on LinkedIn too, I don't want to, LinkedIn's confusing because it was around and it was a professional kind of platform. And then all the other social media platforms came around, and LinkedIn has gotten, it's kind of, some of that has sort of rubbed off on LinkedIn, which is not a bad thing necessarily. But what I said about remaining professional, I am also an advocate for showing more of yourself in your about section, showing what else you're about, not that it's just work, and how some of those pieces kind of contribute to you being a good candidate. So I'm not saying don't open up about yourself, but I think in some cases, like you said, I'm not sure that's an effective sort of sales approach to put yourself in a...
No, and LinkedIn is some valuable real estate areas, like the banner up at the top. You're looking for a job, you need minimally your email and your phone number up there. You have to, they have to have a way to be able to get in touch with you. And it's not what your job title is, but what is it that you do?
Right.
Exactly. Where's your strength? Put that out there. Now, when if somebody's doing a LinkedIn search through like LinkedIn Recruiter or Sales Navigator, it will pick up on the different titles that you have in your jobs down below. So you don't have to worry up at the top where, they always say, I was an account executive or something. You don't have to worry about that being picked up. It's down in the jobs section. But you can go onto Canva for free and design a nice LinkedIn banner and make it, really professional. It's a professional networking site. You probably should go out and get some decent headshots for yourself. You don't want to be there with your drinking buddies or, little kids and dogs and things like that, unless that happens to be something related to your career. That's what Facebook is for.
Right.
Instagram is for that.
Right.
But start maximizing that. But put in under each of the jobs, put your major accomplishments. Why did they let you exist there at the company? What did you do for them? And so that's because, I find that, that's part of our screening process. And, I would say roughly about 20% of the people that we would be screening were not able to describe a major accomplishment at their employers. And so and obviously, that's someone that we can't continue on with, no matter how much they would like the job. But no, you can start leveraging these tools to be able to really enhance your career. But more importantly, it's start going after the companies where you want to work. Because a lot of them are not advertising their jobs, but they have openings. But your competition is over there, busy hitting, apply on Indeed and in LinkedIn. So, and other job boards. So this will separate you from the crowd.
Yes. And that is one of the most important things, because it is a crowd. And so you do need to separate yourself. And what you were saying earlier about, connecting with the hiring managers at companies you want to work at, I find, or at least I did find in my experience with working with people, that was viewed as a reasonable request, but it was very hard for people to do. So I don't know if you have any. I mean, it's just scary, I guess.
You mean in order to connect with a hiring manager?
I would. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't say that very well. But I mean, I would give people that same advice, but rarely would they do it. They would just not feel like, oh, I can't do that. I'm bothering them or whatever, which is not being a great salesperson.
That's funny, that you say that, because I have people that contact me and say, I'm looking for whatever job that they're looking for, and if I don't have that, if we're not representing one who has that, and I mean, and we're not promoting candidates, like just to take a candidate unless they're really highly specialized in their experience. But I'll say, here's what I recommend that you do. And I'm even happy to review the email. It's a very simple format that I teach them. I mean, you've got the hiring manager. You just say, would this experience be of benefit to you? And then you list bullet point 3 major accomplishments that are going to be relevant to that company, and say, please let me know if you'd like more information. I'll tell you, it is a simple thing. It doesn't take that long really to write it out. I even offer, I'll say, listen, I'm happy to review your email and, what you want to send out. And no one ever takes me up on it.
Wow.
Yeah. And yet it works like a charm every time.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting.
But you have to know who you're targeting. You can't just pick somebody out of the blue. And if you have no relevance, your background doesn't have any relevance, then, it's not going to land with them. Mm-hmm. So, but, if this is like, if you're going in a particular way and you can show that hiring manager how you're going to make them money or save them money, they want to talk to you.
Yeah, that is interesting. And do you find that these hiring managers are typically always looking? Because that's one of the things that, there's a lot of advice for entrepreneurs to be always hiring. Not that you're necessarily like actually hiring, but be always acting like you're hiring, because you never know when you're going to need somebody. And instead of it being like this stop and start and panic and everything, that to kind of always be on the lookout. Do you find that hiring managers are doing that?
No, I think that most of them wait until they have somebody leaves, and then they feel like they got to get on the stick and get moving. But companies need talent. I'll tell you, it was in 2008 when we had the big financial crash, and the CEO of Marriott Corporation put out a video and said, we are doing a hiring freeze, except for key positions. He was real clear about that. And so they were, even in the midst of a financial crisis in this country, well, worldwide, even at that time, they were still looking for talent. And so any entrepreneur worth their salt should always be on the lookout for talent. Because they may be able to fulfill other areas, that to be able to take you to that next level. Mm-hmm. So so they have to be proactive about it. Just like job seekers, they have to be proactive about managing their careers.
Right.
Not it goes back to that book, Spencer Johnson, Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
We get in, we like the people, we like what we're doing, and we settle in, and we're oblivious to the signs around us. And sometimes we even slack off, maybe because we feel too comfortable. Mm-hmm. And then there's a layoff, and you're one of the ones to go. Yeah. But if you're always on the lookout for yourself, because, and Michelle, because of, of course, your focus in money and finance, and the importance of this, that if you're not managing your career yourself, somebody else is doing it for you, and they may not be doing a good job. And that's going to impact your future down the road. Because you could be losing out on so much income if you are not actively managing your career. Just like managers of companies and entrepreneurs of the companies aren't, if they're not managing their companies well, everyone's in the same boat.
Yeah.
So, and if you want to live the life that you envision, you got to start taking all this seriously.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it's that complacency, I think, that comes back and bites you, whether it's with your financial situation or with your career and or your business for that matter. I mean, you can be an entrepreneur and, something's going really well for you, but if you aren't paying attention, that can end, and then you haven't prepared for the next thing, So you're exactly right. This is an area that we like to settle in and just sort of sit back. And that's where I would find the people who would get laid off after 20 years in a company, they were very out of it. They had not thought about their next step. They had not updated resumes or LinkedIn or learned how to do any of that. So it's really a blow. I mean, if nothing else, just protect yourself from what is now, in my opinion, a somewhat inevitable thing. I mean, people are not retiring with their companies the way they used to. So at some point, you're going to want to leave, or they're going to want to help you exit. So
yeah, and and with so much uncertainty, with a lot of these companies, especially, everybody, it's so sexy to go work for a startup and get all of these, stock options and everything else, and thinking I'm going to, be the next Mark Zuckerberg, but that doesn't happen like that, very infrequently. So, but once that, it's like that saying, the old saying, it's like no one's coming to save you.
Right.
So
Prince Charming isn't
you
coming.
have to be able to start taking the reins. And, and I read something early this morning, and there was a guy who was working 3 jobs, all 3. They didn't know about him working the other jobs. And so one was working well, and he was making $390,000 a year by working the 3 jobs. And somehow it was working out. Now, and then one job ended. And so, but he still had his stream of income, 2 other streams of income. And so then he went in search of a third, and that's the other thing too. No one teaches us things like that. The wealthy they have multiple streams of income. They're not relying upon a job. Yeah. You're putting when you put all your eggs in one basket, you could have some real problems when things go south in one area.
Yeah.
So by, learning how to invest and just knowing that there's the only person you can count on is yourself. So it's, start developing yourself in order to make sure that you can, manage your career, manage your investments, and have a good life.
Yeah, thank you. That's an amazing wrap up, because that you're so right. And it's funny because you were saying, that's what the wealthy do. I'm also seeing that that's what really young kids are doing these days. I mean, people in their early 20s, I was just talking to my daughter, and she was telling me about a friend, and I said, oh, what does that person do? And it was like 5 or 6 different things. I mean, there were jobs, there were things, sort of side gigs, there were all kinds of things. And that, my son gets up in the morning and does his little day trading thing, and I mean, they're all kind of scrappy right now. And I sadly, I think it's sort of born out of fear, because, what they see out there is tough. And so they feel like they have to have this in many cases, and maybe they do. But I also find it interesting, and I find it to be a little bit of a safety net that you can have 3 or 4 different things that you can lean on in different times. So, it's a different job world than it was when I was growing up. But
there was more stability.
There was more
with
stability
companies.
and less options, though. I think today we have we have a lot more opportunities, but it is less it's less predictable and reliable than it was. So
yeah, I mean the auto workers, they would stay there through retirement. The major corporations, everybody till they got the gold watch, and the retirement party. I think most of us have, grown accustomed to the fact that that's just not our reality anymore. And that, of course, that gave us something really great too in entrepreneurialism. If you couldn't rely upon them, you had to rely upon something else. And you also had good ideas. So, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, but to your earlier point, it has to be managed because it is more complex than going to a job every day and knowing you'll be there till retirement. So as you were saying before, you have to be strategic about it. You have to manage it. You have to be on top of it. You've got to notice the changes going on and figure out how you're going to react just like a company needs to. So I think that's a great takeaway for today too. And that is going to put it back in the context of money, that's going to hopefully cushion you against some of these long periods of potentially no income if you lose a job. And because, what do you see as, and then sadly, we're going to have to wrap up here. But what do you see as the timeline for people? I think of it as a little longer than I think most people think. I mean, obviously it's different for everybody, but there is a little bit of a lag, especially at the higher levels. If you lose a job, to that road to getting your next one. But what do you see? I may be off on that.
I think if you are proactive, I think that if you really do. Identify exactly what it is that you can do for companies because of your experience and what you've done in the past. They'll want to talk to you. It's not that there are not jobs available. There are all kinds of jobs available. So it is, but you just, you have to start identifying that, what you're going to be able to do for them.
Right.
That is what's going to be, what can I say? It's, again, taking that proactive approach. Companies overhired, which is why there's a lot of the layoffs. So, and then they just started culling through, okay, who really is going to be able to help us get to that next level. So it's not that it was the economy here, but rather that maybe we look inward and say, was I really delivering value to my employer? And chances are that you weren't. And that's why you're no longer there. Unless the company really just massively screwed up and, and you just had to lay off a bunch of people for that reason. But most of the time it's because you weren't giving them value anymore.
Yeah. Well, Kathy, thank you so much. This time went so fast. I could have talked to you all day long, actually, but there was so many things that we even had talking about that we didn't get to. But
right.
But I want you to let people know how to reach you. I think for me, to summarize, I mean, this idea of being proactive is so important. And I could say I'm probably wrong on the idea of it taking a long time if you're proactive. And it's the same thing with your money. Be proactive. Don't wait, for years before you start some of the things that will help you grow your wealth. So please let people know how to contact you. You're a wealth of information, and how to access some of your programs and services.
Yes. So you can reach me at khammond@recruitsalute.com. You can also see the information there. Also, you can reach me if you go through the website. So I would be happy to share what I know with others.
That's great. And on LinkedIn too, right?
Also on LinkedIn, yes. Yeah. Kathy Hammond. Yeah. Recruit
and,
Salute.
if people are interested in this topic, you mentioned a post that you just did. So obviously you're posting, and that's another great way to get information and to connect with you.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And Yeah, really, really could have talked to you for longer, but I'm going to get kicked out here in a minute. So thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
And, thank you, audience, for being here. We love having you
Yes.
listening to our show. And, if you enjoyed it, if you know it can help a friend of yours, please share it. And please give us a review. We would love that as well. It allows me to bring on more great guests like Kathy. And thank you, ubngo.com, for broadcasting the show. You'll be able to find the show on all the podcast platforms, on the Limit Free Life YouTube channel, and on Roku. And I think that if you're interested in your career, your business, or your money, you're bound to find some amazing information on the Money and You Show podcast. So thank you for being here. We'll see you next week.